Let's get into it. We're gonna break down all of the new talents because if you didn't know, whoa, I got some info for you. We got some new talents, and we got, well, they're not exactly leaks because the developers put on some Twitch streams about them and showcased the new talents coming in Chapter 2 for Spellbreak. So today, we're just going to run through all of the new talents and talk about them, mind, body, and spirit, and talk about, what are the pitfalls to avoid in these new talents? What are the good talents? Maybe some builds, a build for each class, something like that. We'll just run through them, and then we'll get a little hyped, I think, for Chapter 2, because Chapter 2 is on the way, and yeah, it might already be here by the time you're watching this. And I think there are some really cool talents in here, and there are some nice omissions from the talent pool, from the talents that we had previously, and there are some nice inclusions and some nice switch arounds and mix em ups and stuff like that. So some interesting things have happened with the talents. So let's hop into it. Let's freaking do it. Let's move on now to the spirit section. In spirit, we're starting off with a 1-point talent, and that is mystical. Mystical adds mana. You get more mana now. You get a higher cap to your max mana, which goes up by 10, 12, 15, 25. In max mana, mana I think in general is a little obtuse, perhaps, in this game, where it's not, I think a lot of people don't exactly know how mana works. So I'll break it down for you a little bit. Basically, you start with 50 mana. That's your mana pool that you start with. And each amulet that you put on gives you 10 more mana. So a white amulet will give you 60 mana, green gives you 70, blue gives you 80, purple gives you 90, and legendary gold gives you, or orange or whatever, gives you 100 mana. That's your full mana pool. Now, you spend some mana per second while levitating. I don't actually know the number on that. Let me actually look that up. Okay, so levitating costs 10% of your max mana per 0.1 seconds. That means that you don't get as much benefit out of out of levitating because it scales with how much your max mana is. You can basically levitate for 1 second. That's basically what they're doing, right? Is they're making it so you can levitate for 1 second. That's what happens here. You can always levitate for 1 second before you run out of mana entirely. I think that's right. Let me know. Was that math correct? Let me know in the comments below if I totally messed that up. You can correct it so everybody knows. But basically, mystical just adds on to your max mana. And so that's how much mana you have, which each amulet, from 50 starting up to 100 mana in your pool, and then each gauntlet, each spell costs a certain amount of mana as well on top of levitating. And like Stone Gauntlet costs a good amount of mana, and Frost Gauntlet costs the most amount of mana, whereas like your Wind Shears and Lightning Bolts, those cost the least amount of mana. And there's a whole wiki page for Spellbreak. I think if you go Spellbreak Gamepedia, there are whole sections for all of those numbers and all the breakdowns there if you want to look into that more. But basically, that's how a mana works, and this just gives you a boost there, right? I mean, it's a nice little boost at the start of the game. I think 60, so you'll start the game with 60 mana basically, and I think this will be useful especially for Frostborns, because I think Frostborns, a fully charged white gauntlet shot costs 60 mana, which means that you automatically mana reset after every shot if you fully charge it on drop, which makes no sense to me, but is true. So giving a little bit more mana, that'll make it a little bit better to cast your shots. And if you didn't know this as well, as your gauntlet rarity increases, your mana cost decreases. So like a white gauntlet, for a white frost gauntlet, fully charged shot costs 60 mana, but a gold frost gauntlet on a fully charged shot costs 40 mana. So as your rarity increases, your mana cost decreases, which is a huge benefit for getting better gauntlets, and that's why you should always look for better gauntlets. Even if it doesn't give you a crazy damage buff, sometimes it gives you a big mana cost reduction. which is good to keep in mind. So I've talked enough about Mystical, right? Mystical is a nice little perk, just like all the other 1-point talents. Moving on to the 2-point Spirit talents. The first one is nominally Thirsty, which is not exactly the Thirsty you know, since, like we talked about, it's been split up into Thirsty and Fellowship now. But you do, with this new Thirsty, still retain the Potion and Shard consume speed, and that's from 25%, 35%, 50%, and 75%. Which I think is actually a nerf on the numbers that Thirsty had before, but this is a 2-point talent. So it's probably pretty fair. So you still get the same benefit. I think we'll see a lot of builds still running Thirsty, because especially at higher levels of play in Spellbreak, it just becomes harder and harder and harder to actually get pots off and to heal in a fight, you know, in the way that fights go in Spellbreak. There's a lot of ebb and flow, and there's a lot of resetting or possible resetting that can take place between your class movement and your runes and just your ability to get around. There's a lot of potential resetting, but at a higher level, you know, people are better at resetting, but people are better at denying resets as well. So Thirsty just allows you to get those healing bonuses off a little bit better. And Thirsty combined, we'll see now that when we were talking about Fellowship, and we saw how there were some other very synergistic talents as well. Thirsty is one of those, where you get faster healing. Your consume speed is faster, and then you'll also be able to spread that out to your teammates if you take Fellowship as well. Thirsty is definitely nerfed. It's definitely not the Thirsty that we knew before, but it's still a good potion, or still a good talent rather, where you drink potions and shards at a faster speed. Something that I think we'll see in the meta for sure. Hey, thanks for hopping in here, Stifu. The next 2-point talent for Spirit is Vampiric, and Vampiric now is a really interesting talent, and another one that works really well with Fellowship. So it'll be interesting to see when people take Fellowship, if they combine it with Thirsty more, or if they combine it with Vampiric more, and where the benefit is between the synergy there, because Vampiric heals for various percentages of the health damage done. So when you deal health damage to other people, so that's not armor damage, that's not shield damage, that's not blue damage. When you deal red damage, health damage to people, it heals you at various percentages. So that's 20, 25, 30, and 40% of the damage that you deal to other people's health, you get back for health. Now, it says heal. This is slightly vague. So I'll have to get clarification on this, but I believe Vampiric will only heal your health as well. Someone correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe you'll only heal your own health with Vampiric. It won't heal your armor. So you can only deal damage to health, and you can only take back health as well, which I think is a nice balance. And like I said, the way that Fellowship is worded, any healing effects nearby teammates. So your Vampiric, I mean, you're healing with Vampiric, so that's gonna work with Fellowship. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, if people see the benefit of Thirsty more in combination with Fellowship or Vampiric. But I think we'll have to see this in play a little bit. But I like both of these talents. I think they'll be interesting and make for some interesting builds. And they increase the time to kill, which is good, because it's pretty low in Spellbreak as it stands for Spellbreak, that is. Moving on to our 3-point Spirit talents. We're talking about getting inspired first, and now this is another interesting one. So we basically have 2 damage mods in this talent set. So the first one was Wellspring that we were talking about before, which is weird, and when you have 0 mana, which is a bad thing and means you're being wasteful with your mana resource, you get a buff for that for some reason, but that increases your spell damage. Now Inspired also does that, but in a different way, and I think actually in the exact on the exact opposite spectrum of that previous Divine, because this is very I would say I don't want to say intelligent, because I don't want to say the other one's dumb, but like this is very maybe responsible design, I don't know. But while you have a rune charge you get spell damage. So you get, and that's on percentages as well. So 10, 12, 15, 20% spell damage increase while you have a rune charge. So that's while you have at least one rune charge. With Inspired, you get you get more damage output. Obviously going to be a talent that you see a lot of conduits using because of their in-class abilities, but it's also something that you're going to see paired up with runic fluency. And that's going to be probably the most common 403 build in the game, in any order of those numbers, because that's what you're going to see with 7 points. In talents that range from 1 to 4, there are going to be some 4-3 builds in the game, that ignore one of the talent trees. And I think this is going to be the most common because runic, it's obvious, right? With runic fluency, you have an extra rune charge, right? So if you manage your runes well, you're always going to have, or you're often going to have an extra rune charge, and that's going to allow you to proc Inspired more often. So out of the 2 damage mods in the game, Inspired, there are a couple cases where it's going to be really, really useful for conduits and for runic fluency users as well. And in that way, I think it's nice design too, right? Like we were talking about Wellspring being sort of like maybe irresponsible design. This is very responsible design where you have a rune charged, right? While you manage your resource well, you get a benefit. So as you have a rune charge, and while you have that in stock, something that you can use, so you're not just like spamming your mana everywhere, as you have that rune charged, you get a benefit for that. And if you have to use your rune for whatever reason, that's fine. You just don't get that benefit anymore. But then, diligent use of your runes helps you be a little bit more inspired. The second 3-point talent for Spirit is Fortitude, and Fortitude actually received the buff. It used to be a body talent. It's basically unchanged, but the cooldown has just been reduced, which helps out a little bit. So it still starts out at 60 seconds. Fortitude, if you don't know, it creates a barrier around you that absorbs damage from one source before that sort of barrier disintegrates and then reforms later. So it can basically eat one shot. It's a really nice talent if you find yourself getting sniped or outbroken a lot, sort of like out of nowhere. It can absorb that one source of damage, and then you can actually start playing the game, which is nice. Yeah, it's a nice ability, and especially I think we're going to see a lot of Fortitude out in the HoloLands now because it was already pretty good, and now it got a buff. So I think it's going to be even better and used even more often. So it still starts out at 60-second cooldown. So once you get hit, you have to wait 60 seconds for your barrier to come back up. But then it decreases to 50 seconds to 30 seconds, which used to be after 4 scrolls, 30 seconds. So that's half the time right there. And then 20 seconds, which is almost in line. It's just outside the line of most of the sorceries in the game. So I like to think of I've said this before, but I like to think of Spellbreak as rounds of combat where you think about your sorceries, because almost every single sorcery in the game is on a 15-second cooldown. Obviously, there are some ways to modify that in the game, but basically you can think about Spellbreak as rounds of using your sorcery, because the game revolves around sorcery use. A lot of your utility in each class revolves around your sorcery. So I like to think about rounds of combat like that. Now, your Fortitude almost keeps up, it's 20 seconds instead of 15, which is actually a lot, but it almost keeps up with that, right? So basically, like every other round of combat, you're gonna have your Fortitude back, which is a nice way to like sort of start to think about Fortitude as you're going through. So I think it'll be pretty useful. I think it'll actually be really good. Frustrating, of course, for some classes, especially for Frostborn, when you're trying to line up a frost shot and you see that aura, that barrier reappear on somebody. That'll be frustrating, but I think it's a good ability, and it costs 3 points. That's reasonably steep investment in this game, so I think it's fair, and I think you'll see a lot of Fortitude use. I think the 3-point talents are actually some of the most balanced and best in the game. They're some of the talents that I'm happiest with are the 3-point talents, which is nice. And then moving on to our last category, the 4-point spirit talents. We have 2 that are not too bad. I think Foresight was in the game before, and like Fortitude, it just got a numbers buff to it. In Foresight, I think was a good talent as a body talent before, as a 3-point body talent, and that's a 4-point spirit talent. I think it was a pretty good talent before, but it just got overshadowed by something that's not in the game anymore. Woohoo! In Fervor. Fervor was just really, really good on like basically every build, and so no one picked Foresight because of that. Because Foresight, you had to really change the way that you played, and you couldn't just W key, and you couldn't just kind of like crutch on the fact that you could cast way faster than everybody else with Fervor, right? You had to use your head a little bit, and so no one used Foresight, even though I really liked it. And I had some builds, you know, my UAV Pyro build used Foresight and tracking, another info. You can see that I like info gathering in this game. My info gathering abilities, which you can actually use together now. I don't know if that's a good 304 build, tracking Foresight. Maybe it will be as we go through, but now Foresight, you know, you still see future storm circles, you still see mana vaults, and you still see enemies as a blip on the map that shows you the direction they're facing, and you know, it has a little sound too if somebody's on the map. But the like sonar waves when you see enemies actually happens a lot faster now. So it used to be from 10 seconds down to 5 seconds. Now it's 10 seconds down to 3 seconds. So 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds on each scroll read. You can see enemies, and 3 seconds is actually, you know, if remember that when we're talking about tracking, we're talking about 3 seconds being decent, but 10 seconds being really long. Well, this just flips basically the other way, where, you know, 10 seconds is pretty long between getting info on someone's location, but 3 seconds is not very long at all. So, I mean, I think Foresight could actually be used a lot more. And that said, now thinking about how much tracking might be used in the meta now and how much Foresight might be used, you gotta kind of remember at all times when you're, especially in the BR, when you're going through the HoloLands, that people might know where you are basically at any point. And so hiding and like really like getting a full reset and hiding for a while is going to be much more difficult in the HoloLands now. And it's just something to keep in mind, that if you get into a fight, you can still reset, but you're gonna have to fight pretty soon again, because odds are, you know, if you're in squads or something like that, somebody might be using tracking or Foresight. So it's just something to keep in mind as we go into the new chapter, into chapter 2, as we go forward. Keep that in the back of your head, that, you know, these are 2 talents that weren't really used before, but are probably going to be used a lot more now, and you'll have to look out for that. But Foresight, you know, it's a thumbs up from me. I liked this talent before, and it's better now. So I'm not upset about that at all. The last talent that we're going to talk about, the final talent. Whoa, what a ride it's been. The final 4-point spirit talent is Gilded. On reading a spirit scroll, you upgrade all equipment items by 1 rarity, which is pretty cool. So your that goes for your main hand gauntlet, your offhand gauntlet, your rune, your belt, your amulet, your boots. That's all your equipment that you have. I don't think this would affect potions. I can't imagine. That would be really, really annoying if this affected potions. So I don't think it'll affect potions. I think those are probably like consumables rather than equipment, now that I'm thinking about it. But all of those equipment items, so gauntlet, rune, rune, belt, amulet, boots, all that stuff will increase by 1 rarity when you read a spirit scroll, which is pretty, I mean, that's kind of a nice benefit. It's a pretty heavy cost for getting that benefit, and you know, 4 points for Gilded is a pretty heavy cost. I think I I would hesitate to use this one for sort of similar reasons as I've seen some of the other abilities be like traps, right? Like Curious and Athletic, where once you use it, sure, it gives you it gives you a benefit, but then once you use it, it doesn't give you a benefit anymore. I'm sort of there with Gilded, but it does really give you a benefit, and it's not always easy to find better than, blue gear. I think basically whenever you're in the HoloLands, if you're trying to find blue gear and you're trying to find a specific kit, you can usually find at least blue gear. So that's nice, and so you don't really have to worry about that, and that's why I would probably stay away from Gilded in most situations. But if you, for whatever reason, if you really want to have legendary gear, usually you have to find it at a mana vault or, off someone's exiled body, right? But this allows you to upgrade to get legendary gear, legendary stuff, and it can give you like a full legendary set, or something like that, just by reading scrolls, which is nice. So you get 3 chances to upgrade the rarity of your stuff. That's it can be nice off drop, if you find a spirit scroll out of your first chest, even if you don't have all your equipment, just to upgrade your main hand gauntlet out of being a common gauntlet, because a common gauntlet and common equipment is by far the worst equipment. I think other than most things in this game aren't necessarily linear, so as the rarity of things increase, the benefit that they give you also increases, not like fully exponentially, but it increases the amount of benefit that it increases. And I know for amulets it's just like 10 more mana each time, and for boots, so maybe some things are linear in this game, but it gives you an increase, but especially for gauntlets, the amount of damage that your gauntlet does and the amount of mana that it costs are significantly worse on common variants compared to uncommon, and then compared to rare. So the benefit that you get from rare to legendary is much smaller than from common to rare. So for an example, the fire gauntlet, at least how it is right now when I'm recording, does 25 damage on a common variant, and it does 34 damage on a rare variant. So that's 9 a 9 damage difference. From 25 to 34 is 9 damage difference. From rare 34 to legendary, it goes up to 38. So it's 4 damage difference from rare to legendary. So there's a huge difference upgrade, especially when you have some, blue, green, or green or white gear, common or uncommon gear. Upgrading, getting it closer to epic, really gives you even more of a benefit than you would otherwise get as you go higher. So that can be really useful for Gilded. I would kind of stay away from Gilded. I think you can get a lot more out of other abilities, out of other talents here. I think you can, put together a kit that does a lot more. But Gilded is not really a bad option because it can give you a nice benefit early game, and then that benefit lasts as you go, especially once if you can get, purple gear or something like that and then read a scroll, or have some scrolls lined up to get, when you have like green or blue gear, and then to level it up all the way, if you can get all the way to legendary. Or you can just, if you're just having no luck, because this happens to me sometimes too, right? I have no luck getting a freaking gauntlet, especially like my main class gauntlet. Sometimes it feels like Spellbreak just doesn't want to give you your main class gauntlet. So this will help you to actually get a gauntlet that works for you a little bit as you go through, and gear that works for you as you go through, especially belts will be helpful for Gilded. All right, and those were all the spirit talents listed for you. Now we've talked about all of the talents that are coming up in Chapter 2. I hope that was educative. I hope that that was at least in a little bit educational and allowed you to wrap your head around the new builds that are coming out and the new ways that you might play. I'm really excited for some of the builds, and especially on some of my main classes like Frostborn and Pyromancer. I already, the wheels are turning a little bit on some of the classes that I might be playing. So like I said, I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. You can also leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite build is going to be. You know, help me out. Maybe you'll inspire me to think about a new build. I'll give you credit in the next video if you give me a talent build that I didn't think about before. I'm just saying. You know, I might post a little comment right here for you. Who knows? If you want to follow me even closer, ooh baby, you can follow my Twitch channel as well as all my other social media. You can hop into my Discord as well, where there are fellow breakers talking about this game that we know and love. Links to all that down below, of course. Until next time, guys. Nice, guys, see how I did that too? I'm smart, dude. I'm smart with it. I'm doing all the YouTube stuff. Hello, chat. Hello, chat. How's it going, guys? Sorry, I ignored you for so long. Did you guys have some fun discussions, or you just mocking me the entire? I wasn't looking at chat. You guys could have just been mocking me right down here the entire when I was talking up here. You guys could have just been saying stupid, mean things about me. Please don't do that. Please, when I'm making YouTube videos in the future, please don't do that. But it would be funny. But please don't.